As long as you don't spill it. Okay. Hold on, I'm feeling all kinds of uncomfortable here. Hi. We're just getting cranked up here. Come on in. My seat's available. Y'all don't have to be all quiet just because the administrator walked in. She's here. All right. Yeah, obviously we're going to record this thing for the wash that was yesterday. All right. So, my sound's good? Everything's lovely? Perfect. Are we on? Groovy. All right, so start off taking a look at our standards here, things that we have and need to cover. In this class, did we get through these blue terms? No? Okay, perfect. I think second and fourth, I think I made sure to put the hurry up on so that we could hit those. If not, we're going to review them anyway. So, what did we leave off with in here? Spoil system? Okay, cool. So we've already hit that participatory democracy. We talked about Jackson giving universal white male suffrage. What does that actually give? Yeah, all white men can vote. There's no longer a prerequisite that you have to have what? Land. Good. So we've hit this part right here. Down here, remember, we are continuing in these political parties. We'll continue to talk about tariffs. We'll talk about their views on the power of government and Europe. But remember, the whole thing with Europe has already really been settled because what's the cornerstone of our foreign policy for the next 100 or so years? Which says what? There you go. You know, they're not going to have new colonies, and we're not going to go over there. Appreciate it. So, we've knocked out that part. In terms of our political part, actually, I'll just mention it once we get down to here. In B, remember, we already hit McCullough v. Maryland and kind of established the fact that just about everything in the martial court is going to establish what over what? Good, good. So we've got this one taken care of. Down here, we're going to dig into Part C here a lot today. All right. Understand, it says these new political parties arose. We've already hit them. Remember that corrupt bargain is going to split up the Republican Party into the Democratic Republicans and National Republicans. I want you guys to understand that the Democratic Republicans, that party of Jackson, going forward from today, they are no longer calling themselves Democratic Republicans. They're calling themselves Democrats. The National Republicans are now going by the name Whigs. Okay, kind of a throwback to that political party during colonial times. Okay, so we've got that. Oh, by the way, Clay is the leader of the Whigs, and we'll talk about his ideas and really what makes up the platform of the Whig Party. And then down here, D, we've already hit D. Remember, what is it that's going to cause the decline of nationalism and the rise of sectionalism? Good, that panic. All right, it becomes much more sectional in nature, and we will continue to divide the country along those sectional lines. All this stuff, this is all our little hippie mumbo jumbo, feel good like a lit teacher, and with a lit teacher here, that's awesome. And so we'll hit all this stuff on probably Monday or Tuesday. You know, I think I'm going to try to run through all this stuff on Tuesday. It's not going to take a very long time because of a lot of it, you know, we already have the foundational understanding. So we'll hit that stuff later on. In 1824, we see who got the most electoral votes. Jackson, but Jackson did not win because he didn't have what? A majority. So JQ is going to win the election with that corrupt bargain. What exactly happens in that corrupt bargain? Come on now. Somebody use your big boy voice or big girl voice.
basically gets Adams to be president, and then Adams lets Clay, or appoints Clay to be Secretary of State.
Correct. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Yeah. Remember, he's going to get, what is it, Missouri and Kentucky to put that vote for JQ. JQ becomes the president. He's rewarded with the Secretary of State, the stepping stone. Okay. So we hit that. And then we also had that Tariff of 28. Why is the South calling the Tariff of 28 the Tariff of Abomination?
Because it hurts the agricultural, sort of like the agricultural aspect of their economy, and it sort of just helps and like supports the industry of the.
Good, good. And remember here, the part of the country that is in favor of this, what are we calling that area right there? Rust Belt. That Rust Belt. Good. So, J.C. Calhoun here, sitting vice president, comes with the South Carolina Exposition and Protest. Obviously, he and his state don't like this tariff. And what idea is he going to propose? Nullification. Okay, we're really going to see South Carolina kind of going off on its own and causing some problems. They're going to start to want to nullify everything, and we'll get into that shortly. All right. 28. Does Jackson get his majority? Yes. All right. And so he's in. Now, we talked Jackson. We talked about you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him. He's either a tyrant king or a face that should be on money. We talked the kitchen cabinet. What is his kitchen cabinet?
His unofficial cabinet.
Yeah, that unofficial, informal cabinet that he relies on more often. What about the spoil system? Remember, the Whigs are going to over-exaggerate that spoil system.
He gets rid of a bunch of people.
What percent does he actually get rid of?
15.
About 15, and why is that such a low number in what it probably could have been?
Because Adams picked people based on qualification instead of political philosophy.
And so he ended up appointing a bunch of, Jacksonians. Good. All right. And we talked universal white male suffrage, and what's he going to use to push policy and stop opposition? Veto. Good. And we'll see a lot of those vetoes coming at us today. All right. Now, as soon as Jackson gets elected, he's going to imply that he's only going to serve one term. Okay, he implies that he's only going to serve one term. And so immediately we start to see J.C. Calhoun, what's his job? Vice President, and Martin Van Buren. That's that MVB. It's not MUB. MVB. All right. Martin Van Buren. Van Buren at this point becomes the Secretary of State. We've got the Vice President. And both these guys are really feuding with each other over who is going to follow Jackson in 32. Okay. Jackson, for the most part, keeps a low profile. Okay, he's going to keep a low profile through this, and it's strange because here we have Calhoun, the VP. Is he a nation over state or state over nation guy? And we know that because he's a big proponent of nullification. All right, so he's our state over nation guy. Van Buren is going to become that Secretary of State. He opposes nullification. He believes in the supremacy of the federal government, which clearly makes him what? Good, nation over state. Now, based off philosophy, who should Jackson be closer to? MVB or Calhoun? Calhoun, because what do we know about Jackson? He's a states' writer. All right, remember, we established those Democratic Republicans as the party of states' rights. But remember, at this time, what trumps philosophy? Personality. All right. So,
Is Calhoun a state over nation or nation over state?
Calhoun is a state over nation. He's a state over nation. And then, of course, we know Clay is what? Nation over state. Okay. So, Jackson's, like I said, though, he's going to keep a low profile. He's not really going to reveal his hand until April of 1830. Okay, April of 1830, everybody's getting together for the Jefferson Day dinner. Okay, the Jefferson Day dinner is this great big Democratic event. It is this event that if you've got something to toast or to announce, you do it here. All right, you do it here. And so everybody's there. Like I said, this great Democratic event celebrating Thomas Jefferson and democracy in America on the 25th toast of the evening. You can kind of gauge that level of sobriety at that point. 25th toast of the evening, Jackson's going to stand up and he's going to ask Van Buren to help him give a toast. Together they stand up, they raise their glasses and they say, "Our nation, our Union, it must be preserved. Our Union, it must be preserved." The very next toast is Calhoun. Calhoun comes out and says, "States, or our Union next to states' rights." Saying our Union next to states' rights, he is reaffirming his belief in what? States over nation. And we see at this Jefferson Day dinner that Jackson has just flipped to which side? Nation over state. What we're going to see coming out of this Jefferson Day dinner is Van Buren and Jackson are going to start this little lovely bromance. Okay? And it's going to cause a divide between Calhoun and Jackson. Okay? What really is one of the big things that pushes that wedge between Jackson and Calhoun is the Eaton affair. Okay, the Eaton affair. The Eaton affair really surrounds or centers around a woman named Peggy O'Neill. Okay,
What did Jackson and their parents said during the Jefferson dinner?
Said that we have to save the Union. We have to save the Union. Why might they say that though? What's starting to happen? Rising sectionalism. Good. Okay. But like I said, let's go ahead and divide these two guys here with that Eaton affair. Okay. Surrounding Peggy O'Neill, her father owned a boarding house. Okay. Boarding houses are real popular in D.C. because remember, most congressmen are only in D.C. for a couple of months during the congressional session. And so they don't typically buy homes. They just stay in these boarding houses, basically where they're renting a room for the congressional session. Now, Peggy O'Neill has gained quite a reputation for, well, let's just say for being very forward with men. Okay? Now, she is going to end up having an affair with a politician named John Eaton. John Eaton's wife would die and he would marry Peggy O'Neill. Fast forward, Jackson puts John Eaton in his cabinet. Eaton becomes the Secretary of War. Okay, and so Eaton is in the cabinet with Van Buren and Calhoun. Now, at that time, Peggy O'Neill has this reputation for, well, being a strumpet. And so people don't want to associate with that. Okay? And the cabinet refuses to socialize with the Eatons. All right? What parallels is Jackson starting to draw? The way that people are treating now Peggy Eaton. Explain. Yeah. Yeah, you know, people are you know, what? They came out and called Rachel what? A whore. Yeah, said she's a whore. All right? And so Jackson's starting to draw these parallels. Okay? And remember, Jackson already hates who? Henry Clay, because he believes Henry Clay has done what? Killed his wife from the stress of that campaign. Okay, so what Jackson's going to do is he's going to mandate, he's going to say, you, the cabinet, have to associate with the Eatons. Van Buren will socialize with the Eatons. Calhoun ostracizes them. All right? It's at that point we see them getting even tighter, and Jackson starts to view Calhoun the same way he views who? Henry Clay. Okay? So, we really see some big issues. This feud is going to be one of the best, or the greatest political feuds of this time period. To the point where in 1832, Calhoun's going to resign from the vice presidency because they've been writing letters, they've been talking trash. It gets really tense between these two. And like I said, he's going to resign and end up becoming a senator for South Carolina. So, again, the unlikely duo of Jackson and Van Buren is going to lead to another unlikely duo in these two seemingly teaming up as well. Okay? But like we said, who's the leader of the Whig Party? Henry Clay. Okay, Henry Clay is the leader of the Whig Party. And so let's talk about that party as a whole. Okay? Henry Clay, leader of the Whig Party, has a master plan for how he would like to see this country move. All right? His political agenda is what's known as the American system. And since he's the leader of the Whig Party, his American system is going to become the Whigs' platform. Okay? The American system encourages economic development. Really wants three major things. The first wants a recharter or a creation of a new bank. Okay? Remember, when is the bank back on the chopping block? It was rechartered in 1816, which means it's on the chopping block when? 36. Okay? It's on the chopping block in 36. And so Clay wants to see a recharter of the bank, or just a new bank altogether. Second thing, he wants a high protective tariff. What industry are we still trying to protect at this point? Manufacturing. All right? He really wants to promote industrialization.
What was the second one?
High protective tariff.
High protective.
Mm-hmm. And he also wants a lot of internal improvement. What's that word that we've been using for infrastructure? Okay, and we can see it all right here in this little flow chart right here. Oh, high protective tariff to get funding for transportation. Transportation builds better infrastructure. Infrastructure means that our economy can move in a high-speed, low-drag manner. We make money. The country makes money. We continue to be economically successful. Is this a good idea?
No,
Why not?
because the South's gonna be super bad.
Sure, it's definitely going to drive up sectionalism. But in terms of a national economy, because who now, at least on the surface, is now a nation over state guy? Jackson. Should he like this plan? Yes. Theoretically, yeah, we're gonna build on infrastructure. We're going to make more money, and we're going to become theoretically an economic giant. Why doesn't Jackson like it? Because it's Henry Clay's. Is this petty? Absolutely. All right. A lot of this stuff is petty and malicious. But as you know, if you really start to kind of analyze this stuff, you guys will start to see there are a tremendous amount of parallels between what was going on in the late 1820s and 1830s as what are going on right now. Okay? A tremendous amount of parallels. Remember, history does what? Repeats itself. And we're on a loop. Okay? Here we are. Now what we're talking about now is happening right now. Almost to the T. All right? So, let's see here. Jackson doesn't like it. One of the big, by the way, what we're looking at right here is the infrastructure that was laid out in the 1820s. Okay, so we can see roads, canals, railways, things like that. We're decently well connected up and down the East Coast. Are we well connected from the west to the east? No, and so these are things that we're looking to develop. One of the big things we did start working on was what we called the National Road. Okay, 1811 we start building a big infrastructure project known as the National Road. It would go from Baltimore to St. Louis, connecting this Ohio River Valley to the centers of manufacturing and trade. Okay, now National Road has it started work 1811. 1830, Congress granted money to extend the road into Kentucky. Okay, they granted money to send the road into Kentucky. This little offshoot coming out of Ohio into Kentucky, this red line that we see here, is what's known as the Maysville Turnpike. Who is really going to like this idea of the Maysville Turnpike?
Kentucky.
Who's the big guy from Kentucky? Henry Clay. Remember, Jackson's from where?
Oh, Tennessee.
Tennessee. Clay's from Kentucky. All right. Congress granted money to extend that road into Kentucky. Clay's from Kentucky. They passed the bill. Does it become law? Whose desk does it hit? Jackson's going to veto this thing. Okay? Jackson's going to veto this thing. I want you guys to understand. Now, we have this like thought from movies and whatnot that a bill hits the president's desk and he's got this big rubber stamp and boom, veto, and he throws it away. That's not how it works. Okay? When the president vetoes something, he has to give rationale as to why. He has to explain why he's vetoing this stuff. Because when the president vetoes it, does that mean the bill's dead? It goes back to Congress and they can do what? Yeah, they can override. All right, they can override with a 2/3 vote. And so when Jackson vetoes it, he questions the constitutionality of granting federal money to create something that is solely going to benefit one state. That's his rationale. But for real though, why does he veto this thing? Because of Henry Clay. All right. He actually feels like he's getting Clay back because what did Clay do? Killed his wife. All right. So that's what we've got going on there. Good day. Now, let's talk about other things on Jackson's agenda. We know he doesn't like the English. Who else doesn't he like? Indians. Okay. And so Jackson being a Westerner, okay, Jackson being a Westerner is Tennessee here. Jackson being a Westerner, he really feels that Indians are an obstacle to progress. He'll actually use that phrase fairly frequently, an obstacle to progress. And so because of this idea, when he crafts his Indian policy, it's a policy of removal. Okay? Remove them. A policy of removal would prevent us from having to destroy the Indians. Just to completely mass genocide, eradicate them from the face of the earth. Okay? Because that's really what people are thinking. Are Native Americans economically useful? No, not to this society. And so if they're not economically useful, they're easily what? Disposed of. Okay? So this policy of removal, rather than just utter eradication, is a very popular opinion at this time. All right. In his very first annual message to Congress, Jackson's going to suggest removal. Congress will respond in 1830 with this Indian Removal Act. Okay, the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This Indian Removal Act is going to be run through under presidential supervision. Why does Jackson want to personally supervise this thing?
Because he really doesn't like them.
Yep. There would be some opposition. All right, there would be some opposition, primarily from New Jersey. Delegates from New Jersey are going to speak for 3 straight days against removal. They will call for an investigation of the land. Really just a bunch of stalling techniques. Okay, a bunch of stalling techniques trying to prevent the vote. It doesn't matter. It's going to pass the House. It passes the House 102 to 97, so a relatively close vote, and it passes the Senate 28 to 19. Okay. Now, three major provisions that I want you guys to know about for this Indian Removal Act. The first one said that the president could exchange Indian land for unorganized land west of the Mississippi. So the president can exchange this land that the Indians have been in, this kind of that burnt orangish color, and it's this and more that's not detailed on the map. We can exchange land here for unorganized land west of the Mississippi. Okay? The second, we would compensate all work done on the land. All right? We would compensate all work done on the land. Meaning all that infrastructure that the Indians had been building with their multi-story brick buildings and their cobblestone streets with their oil burning lamps on the side of the street, we're going to build all that for them out here. What's the problem with that?
They don't have that.
Nope. But who does it sound good to? Sounds good to Jackson. It also sounds good to who? Every white person in the country. All right? Anybody who's voting, it sounds good to them. Hey, that's a fair deal. The third provision is that we would give the Native Americans title to the land. We're going to exchange land with them. We're going to build all the infrastructure that they had developed, and we're going to give them title to the land. What's the problem with giving Native Americans title to land? Is there a belief in land ownership? No. But again, this sounds good to who? People who vote. Okay? Now, by Jackson's last year in office, he will have signed 70 treaties of removal. Okay, 70 treaties of removal. All total, the United States would gain something like 100 million acres of land. Which means if in all these burnt orange pieces and others that aren't listed, if this is 100 million acres, we should be giving the Indians how much land out here? 32 million acres. 100 million acres for 32 million acres. Is that fair? But they're Indians. They're not citizens. They don't matter. But enough people were like, that's just not even half. And so we're going to give them 32 million acres and $68 million. 68 plus 32 equals 100 million something. All right. Now, what are Native Americans going to do with 68 million bucks? Start fires. No, I mean, basically, that's
They could buy anything.
sure. And again, on paper, this looks good to everybody who has assimilated into this American way, but does it mean anything to the natives? Absolutely not.
Wait, so what'd they do with all that money?
The knee-jerk reaction is say casinos. But it would not be this round of let's give the Native Americans money that would start the casinos. That'll be later in the 1800s. But yeah, and it's not even certain that they actually got all that money. But on paper, that says this is what's going to happen. Now, states, before this Indian Removal Act of 1830, different states had started trying to pass laws that would do the same thing. Here in Georgia, December of 1828, Georgia legislation said that on June 1st of 1830, Georgia would control Cherokee land. So basically, they passed a law back in 28 that said in 1830, Cherokee Nation would not exist in Georgia. Okay, they would not exist in Georgia. Cherokees don't like this. The Cherokees are probably one of the most assimilated native groups in the country, and so they want to kind of move within the structure that has been created, and they want legal recourse. Okay, Cherokee Nation is going to get 2 landmark court cases make their way all the way to the Supreme Court. First one, Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. Okay, 1831. They had to go out and find themselves an attorney, and a significant attorney who will represent them. And they're going to get a guy named William Wirt. Okay, W-I-R-T. Little Willie Wirt, he's a former attorney general. You guys know what an attorney general is? Think of the Attorney General as basically, like, at least, yeah, if it's at the national level, the nation's top lawyer. It's the lawyer that represents the nation. So we've got that going on. Little Willie Wirt is going to be their attorney. Now, somebody else who very well could be an attorney general is none other than the winningest wrestling coach in Forsyth County, Coach Travis Gerard.
Am I on video?
You are. Say hi to the World Wide Web.
I'm awesome. Give me a call when you're done with this.
Cool. Yep. So,
Serious.
yeah, I got you. What was the last thing legitimate I said?
It's really
I'm not sure.
Attorney General. Yeah, it's that gray line that I tread, man. Yeah, so Little Willie Wirt. He's going to be their attorney. This Cherokee Nation versus Georgia is the very first to make it to the Supreme Court. Wirt wanted an injunction. Okay, he wants an injunction. You guys know what an injunction is? It's a court order to basically stop doing something. So he wants the federal court system to place an injunction on this and stop Georgia from removing the Cherokee Nation. 1831, the oral arguments were heard in court. Wirt argued that the Cherokee Nation was a foreign nation with sovereignty. Okay, a foreign nation with sovereignty. And because it was a foreign nation with sovereignty, the Constitution gave authority to the federal government to deal with other countries, foreign nations, not the state. Okay? The court was considerate. They listened to the argument, but said that the Cherokee Nation was not a foreign nation with sovereignty. Rather, it was a domestic dependent nation. And because it was a domestic dependent nation, not a foreign nation with sovereignty, the case was filed improperly and it was thrown out. All right? Now, gut check, people are upset. You know, they feel, oh, we got all the way to the top and it didn't work. However, it did prove that the Cherokee Nation was a separate entity, which means that the Cherokee Nation has to wait for another court case to move up, and if it gets to the Supreme Court again, they're going to definitely file themselves as a what? Domestic dependent nation. Okay? They didn't have to wait long. 1832, you get Worcester versus Georgia. Okay? Now, law said that if you were on Cherokee land, you had to obey Georgia law. Okay? In fact, before going on to Cherokee land, you had to take an oath saying that you would follow Georgia law. Now, Worcester and other missionaries went on to Cherokee land and did not obey Georgia law. I'm not certain as to what exact law they broke, but it's irrelevant for this. Okay? They didn't obey Georgia law, and in fall of 1831, the missionaries were convicted and given 4 years of hard labor. Okay? They will appeal that all the way to the Supreme Court, Worcester versus Georgia. Okay? Little Willie Wirt, he's the attorney again. This time he's going to file Cherokee Nation as domestic dependent, and make the same argument, saying that the Constitution gives the federal government clout to deal with domestic dependent nations, not the state of Georgia. March of 1832, the Supreme Court ruled. Supreme Court said that the Cherokees are a distinct community and that Georgia law has no force in Cherokee Nation, meaning that Georgia law in Cherokee Nation is invalid. All right? I tried to not gulp that time. Whatever. I'm just going to gulp.
So what did the government say about the Georgia and Cherokee?
Said they are a distinct community and that Georgia law is invalid. Now, that's awesome. That's a big win, except what branch of the government enforces law? Who's the chief executive? How does Jackson feel about Indians?
No.
Jackson comes out and says, and I quote, "Marshall made his ruling or his decision, let him enforce it." What this is a hollow or a dry victory for the Cherokees. Okay, hollow or a dry victory. You guys know what that means? A hollow or a dry victory? You win, but you win what? Nothing. Okay. And so, that kind of ends the Native American pushback to this Indian policy. Now, when we think of Indian removal in the Cherokees, we oftentimes think about what? Trail of Tears. All right. Now, I want you guys to notice something. Okay, we got the Seminoles. They get thrown onto a boat, taken to the river, up the river, and then they hike out the rest. Chickasaw, Choctaw, they have easy routes to this unorganized land. Even the Creek, they move out. Cherokees, they get taken, now mind you, this is going to be in February, through one river, over a mountain range, through 2, 3, 4 rivers into Cherokee land. Or I'm sorry, into unorganized land. Why are the Cherokees forced to go through this route? Yeah, they made Jackson look bad. And if you make Jackson look bad, he's going to come after you. Okay? And so once we get into Martin Van Buren, because that Trail of Tears kind of straddles Jackson and Van Buren, we'll take another look at that. Okay. So we've divided political parties. We beat up the Indians. Another thing that Jackson doesn't like is the bank. Okay, he doesn't like the bank really at all. The reason why he doesn't like the bank, he lost a lot of money in that 1819 panic, and then he heard that the bank had been campaigning against him. Okay, and so he doesn't like the bank at all. Jackson wanted to really get rid of the bank. Now, understand, the Secretary of the Treasury had been working on a bit of a reform. It basically entailed, you guys remember how when we created the bank, we sold stock in the bank, and some of it was bought by the people, some of it was bought by the government. The idea of this little reform is to reduce the association of the federal government with the bank. And that entailed paying or selling off some of that stock, or a lot of that stock, that the government owned. The idea was sell that stock off and take that money and apply it to the national debt. Okay? Jackson really liked that because we pay down the national debt and it reduces association with the bank, an entity that he doesn't like. Now, if we think back to that American system, whose plan is that? Henry Clay. What was one of the first pillars of the American system? Recharter the bank. Okay. Henry Clay sees the writing on the wall. And so he is quickly going to, towards the end of 1831, go and have a private meeting with the president of the bank, Nicholas Biddle. Now, last time we saw Clay have a private meeting with somebody, what happened? Adams won the election and Clay became Secretary of State. Okay. What's going to happen this time is Clay goes and meets with Biddle, and then there's the Whig nominating convention, and guess who gets nominated to be the presidential nominee for the Whigs? Henry Clay. Okay, so in December of 31, Henry Clay gets nominated for president in the Whig Party, and Clay wants to make this bank the central focus of the campaign. Okay, that was in December of 31. January of 32, Biddle goes walking into Congress and wants a recharter of the bank. Is the bank politicking here? Absolutely. Okay. Congress will respond to Biddle's request with the Bank Bill of 1832. Okay? Bank Bill 32 is a recharter of the bank. Okay, it's a recharter of the bank. Jackson's furious. Jackson's furious. He thinks that these two are colluding together, and he really feels that this Bank Bill of 1832 is an ultimatum for him. If he passes the Bank Bill of 32, there's a good chance that he will, what? Get reelected. If he vetoes the bill, what'll happen? Yeah, Clay will win the presidency. Okay? He doesn't like the bank at all. And so what we're going to see here is the Democrats are going to try to delay. They want to delay the vote until after the election. They'll investigate the bank, paint a real negative view of it. They'll try to stall on the House floor, a couple different techniques there, but it doesn't matter. This bank bill passes Congress, passes the Senate 28-20, and the House 107-85. All right? Does that make it law? Goes to Jackson. July 10th, Jackson issues the bank veto. Okay? Issues a bank veto. Now, let's take a look at this, political cartoon here. You guys have been struggling a little bit with analyzing it, and so one of the techniques that I want to encourage you guys to do is, you guys are looking at the whole thing and having a hard time picking out little pieces that'll help provide context. One of the things I want to encourage you guys to do is kind of basically just put like a crossbar on it. You could do this for real when you get actual documents in your hand, or just, mentally. We take a look right here in this compartment. What's happening there? Huh? Yeah, we got some celebration going on here. Who can we suppose? Well, yeah, that's probably Jackson, and I'm pretty sure it's Major Downey. Okay? What's happening below that, right here?
A hat on the floor.
Sure. Whatever that means. Okay. What about up here? Pillars. All right. Now, if we're looking at just the top half, what do we see happening?
Lightning coming out of the bill.
And doing what? Yeah. So, is this a bill, or is this Jackson's what? It's his veto message. It's his veto message, toppling the walls of the bank. And then we take a look down here in the bottom left quadrant. What's going on?
There's a guy with like a horn or something.
Yeah, we got some strange little devilish creature. I don't know. It could be Henry Clay. It could be the devil. We've got that second great awakening going, so there's a lot of stuff. What about the rest of the people? Are they as pumped as these people up here are? No. Okay. Or starts with a B. Yeah, ends with an anchors. Bankers. All right. So Jackson's going to issue his bank veto. Can he just veto it, or does he have to give reason? He's going to use a constitutionality argument. Remember, the bank was initially created saying that it was what? Necessary and proper. He comes out and says McCulloch v. Maryland didn't settle the issue, and the bank is no longer necessary and proper. Okay? Now, this is a strong message because he's really coming out and saying that it's not necessary and proper. He's also saying that the Supreme Court isn't the only branch to deem constitutionality. All right? He's coming out and basically saying the president has the power to legislate. Does the president have those abilities? No. But what do we know about the power of the president under Jackson? It's going to expand. Jackson is going to expand the power of the president. And nobody really calls him on it. And so when Jackson does it, every president since him is going to do what? Follow that precedent. Okay? And so we see right here with this bank veto, the power of the president is expanding. He's going to end this veto message saying he trusts the people's choice. But overall, the veto message was strong. It was very controversial. Okay? It was very controversial. Just because he vetoes it, does that mean it's dead? No. Goes to Congress. Congress has to have what kind of a vote? 2/3. They fail the override. Remember, in the Senate, they only passed 20 to 20, in the House 107 to 85. So that's not enough if people vote the same way the second time that they did the first time. All right? Now, with this bank, you know, a lot of people say, oh, Jackson killed the bank. What year is this? 1832. The bank's charter doesn't run out till when? 36. The bank is not dead effective immediately. It just means that the bank is not getting what? Rechartered. Okay? And so we'll talk about later, once we get down to 36, really with those last couple terms, what we're going to do in terms of if we're not going to use the bank as the principal depository funds, the entity that regulates the circulation of currency and regulating state banks. We'll talk about how that'll get all settled once we get down there. But understand, as of now, we are not rechartering this bank. Okay? So, we get another election, the election 1832. Okay? The election 1832 is fun because 1832 gives us our very first third party. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, third parties. All right. Before we get into my little goat head friends here, it's actually a ram. Same difference though. Third parties. They have a function in this country. All right. Now, they don't get a whole lot of attention. I mean, you guys realize that we actually have something like 10 to 12 political parties in this country? No. Some people don't know that. We only tend to think that there's what? There's 2. All right. Why? Well, yeah, because once it comes down to the televised debates and stuff like that, what parties are the only ones that are there? Yeah, it's because media sleeps in the same bed as the Republicans and Democrats. Okay? They're all in it together. Third parties, though, do have a function in our system. The function of a third party is to bring up new ideas. Okay? Political parties, or third parties, bring up new ideas. They bring up these ideas, and what we see is once those parties start to gain some traction and people start to become attracted to those ideas, typically what we'll see is one of the 2 major parties, if not both, adopt those ideas, and what happens to the third party? It ceases to become relevant anymore. All right? So, here in 1832, our very first third party is the AntiMasonic Party. Okay? The Anti-Masonic Party. Now, the Anti-Masonic Party was actually started in 1826. There was a man who came out and said he was going to reveal all the Masons' secrets. He was killed, supposedly, by a Mason. Okay? You guys know who the Masons are? Kind of, yeah. Freemasons are a offshoot of the original Masons. But that's also your Skull and Bones, and there's some other stuff. But the Masons have been around for a long, long time. They have been the movers and shakers in terms of politics, of economics, for a very long time, not just of this country, but of others. They are a secret society. Now, because of this secrecy, they're oftentimes linked in with the Illuminati. Get real. All right? Get real. This whole, oh, Monty, do you believe in the Illuminati? Oh, what? That you have to sell your soul to the devil to become rich and famous? Come on, people. Find something better to do with your time. All right? The Masons, though, they've been around forever. Okay? All of our presidents have been a Mason or, one of the offshoots, including, presidents that have been around in your lifetime. Okay? Now, The first rule, really, what's the first rule to Fight Club? Don't talk about Fight Club. That's really the first rule of Masons. Okay? And now there are Masonic lodges all over the place. There's one right there on the corner of Little Mill and Browns Bridge. There's another one on 53 and I think, was that Pea Ridge or something? There's one downtown. I mean, you guys walk around. Yeah, I mean, like you can walk around, especially like older towns, and you'll see like Masonic symbols all over the place. Yeah, for sure. And typically, you know, the most striking one that's most recognizable is, you know, there's like a G with like a protractor and a compass. Okay, you know, and you'll see, you know, sometimes people will have like the sticker on their car, you know, wearing a little pinky ring that's got that symbol on it. But really, the higher, the deeper you are in the Mason organization, the less you talk about it. All right, and it's that secrecy that freaks people out. Okay, do what? Yeah, you know, a lot of people want to join it. It's like a fraternity or a sorority, but like on steroids, okay? Really, most fraternities and sororities, all you're really doing is paying for your friends. It's because you are not socially inept enough to make meaningful relationships, so you pay for them. A lot of people do it. It's kind of silly. But the rationale that a lot of people, oh, but the connections for life. Okay, cool. But like Masons for real though. Like those connections will really help, you know, have the ability to really propel yourselves into that world of being a for real mover and shaker of social structures. All right. Now, this movement, this political movement, this anti-Masonic movement, don't worry, I had a lid. Is really going to get it some traction here in 1832 because both Andrew Jackson and Henry Clay are Masons. Okay, they're both Masons. What's the function of a third party? Yeah, new ideas. September 1831, the new idea that the AMP is bringing is the very first nominating convention. Okay, the very first nominating convention. Now, remember, the caucus, it's dead. Okay, we're not doing caucus anymore. Now we're doing nominating conventions. Nominating conventions are where we get together and figure out who is going to be the leader of that party for the upcoming election, and they also, at the same time, craft the platform. Okay, what all's going in? It is not just solely Congress like what we saw in the caucus. All right, now, September 1831, AMP holds that first nominating convention. They get together in Baltimore. A lot of big names. There's a lot of big names that show up. Guys that we'll talk a lot more about in, you know, once we get closer to the Civil War. Guys like William Seward, Thaddeus Stevens, John Marshall's there. Who's he? Chief Justice, Supreme Court. Little Willie Wirt. Who's Willie Wirt? Attorney for? The Cherokees, all right? They're all there. Initially, Marshall showed interest in running, but he would change his mind. Why? Because Supreme Court's the sweetest gig in the federal government. You don't want to be president if you're the Chief Justice. Get real. All right? And so the convention is going to end up nominating William Wirt on the very first ballot. Okay? Wirt's going to get paired up with a guy named Ellmaker as their vice presidential candidate. And it really goes to show you how deep the Masons run. Okay? How deep the Masons run, because the anti-Masonic party just nominated a Mason as their presidential candidate. William Wirt, he's a Mason. Okay? Why doesn't anybody know? Because he's pretty high up. You don't talk about it. Okay? So,
They didn't know you were Mason.
no. We know now because, well, we know. So, December 1831, the Whigs are going to jump on board with this whole idea of a nominating convention. They also are going to get together in Baltimore. Okay? Most states were represented on the very first nomination speech. Who are the Whigs going to nominate? Clay. And after that, nobody gets nominated outside of that. They will produce a document to the people, and it's just full of all this anti-Jackson rhetoric. Okay? May of 32, the Democrats going to get together have a convention in D.C., over 300 delegates in attendance. 23 out of 24 states were represented. And what we're going to see in this very first nominating convention is that the Democrats are going to set out some convention rules. Okay? The big rule that is really going to plague, in my opinion, plague the Democrats for the next 100 years is what I call the silly little 2/3 rule. Okay? Democrats had this rule, and they got rid of it in under Roosevelt, Frankie Roosevelt. This silly little 2/3 rule said that the candidate for president has to get 2/3 vote from the nominating convention. And that sounds great because you're like, man, we got an overwhelming majority of people who are in favor of this one candidate. That is a strong candidate. However, if you've got a lot of candidates to choose from, how easy is getting 2/3? We're going to see, these marathon conventions coming out of the Democratic Party that are going to take days and dozens of ballots. It's just going to be ridiculous. All right? But they're going to nominate Jackson. If you recall, I told you Calhoun resigned as VP, and so they're going to replace him with Martin Van Buren. Okay, so you got a Jackson Van Buren ticket. Biggest issues in this election? The bank. The bank's got to be the biggest issue. What has Jackson just done to it? Yeah, Jackson just killed the bank. The Whigs are saying that the economy is going to tank, and Jackson's just saying that the bank is, well, evil. Outside of the bank, Whigs are going to over-exaggerate the spoil system, and South Carolina is just going to be weird. Take a look at the outcome of the election. Who wins? Jackson. Okay. Jackson's going to win electorally pretty easily. Okay. Electorally pretty easy. We take a look at South Carolina. We're going to see this coming out of South Carolina a lot. They're just going to start voting for hometown heroes because they are dead set on nullifying something and really just being, well, an obstacle to progress. You guys will see as we continue throughout this course that everything wrong in this country ever got its start in South Carolina. We take a look, Civil War starts in South Carolina. J.C. Calhoun, he's from South Carolina. Jay Glimp, he's from South Carolina. And, you guys are just lucky to have me and not him because he'd be corrupting you guys with all kinds of Clemson fandom. Another South Carolina thing. So, we're going to see just South Carolina, they're just...
My sister was born in South Carolina.
Yeah, that's what's wrong with her. That's what's wrong with her. Hi, sis. But yeah. No new states, and Jackson's back in, okay? South Carolina is going to continue to be a problem into Jackson's second term. Remember, who is their lead in terms of Congress? Calhoun. And Calhoun is still dead set on doing what? Nullifying something. Okay? So, this nullification controversy. All right? Really, if we're going to trace nullification to any one entity, it's got to be this Tariff of 1832. Okay, it's got to be this Tariff of 32 here. The Tariff of 32 was a small reduction in the tariff. Okay, it was a small reduction in the tariff. Remember, that Tariff of 28 is what the South was calling the what? The Tariff of Abomination. They didn't like it. It was a protective tariff. They thought that tariff should be for revenue only. Jackson comes out with this Tariff of 32. It is a tariff for revenue only. It is a reduction. Should J.C. Calhoun like this thing?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he? Because it's Jackson. Okay? Now, Jackson not only has got this small reduction in tariff, but he's using the tariff to pay down the national debt. All these things should be positive for Calhoun. South Carolina is not satisfied. Okay, South Carolina is not satisfied. A lot of people in South Carolina want to nullify this tariff. Okay. I want you guys to understand, there were people that wanted to nullify things outside of South Carolina, but in terms of all the nullifiers nationwide, about 2/3 of them were from South Carolina. Okay, so we really see it as a hotbed of Glyphonian principles. Okay, they're not satisfied. They want to nullify it, but nullification has to be done through a convention. Okay, November 24th, 1832, South Carolina will host a nullification convention. Coming out of this convention is the Ordinance of Nullification. Okay, the Ordinance of Nullification. Now, this Ordinance of Nullification is going to nullify both the tariffs of 28 and the tariff of 32. Okay, now, they do this thing November. They say we're going to nullify, in November of 32, they say they're going to nullify the 28 and 32 tariffs. But they say they're going to wait until February of 33 to actually pull the trigger on nullification. Why are they going to wait 3 months?
Because it has to go through.
They're waiting for the election to go.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically saying, hey, ball's in your court, Jackson. What are you going to do? Okay? This is where we stand. What are you going to do? Jackson, he doesn't like nullification. He wants to isolate South Carolina to prevent some type of domino effect. Do we all understand domino effect? Okay, good. All right. In his annual message to Congress, he's going to call for an end to all protective tariffs. He's going to say, I'm going to stop any revolt that happens because of this. All right. He's coming out. He's saying, we have to end protective tariffs. Who should that pacify? Calhoun. All right. South Carolina doesn't budge. December 10th of 32, Jackson's going to give the nullification proclamation in which he just aggressively attacks the nullifiers. He's going to warn that nullification sets a dangerous precedent. After nullification, what's the next step? And then the step after that? Civil War. Okay? Says that it sets a dangerous precedent, and really he's going to spend the whole time in this proclamation just attacking the nullifier's doctrine. Is that a positive way to get South Carolina on your side? No. All right. But again, remember, there's a lot of parallels with what's happening with Jackson. There's a lot of parallels between who? Trump. Okay. A lot of parallels there. January 1833. Jackson's going to send a message to Congress. He wants specific powers to stop the nullifiers. He wants floating customs houses. He wants to put floating customs houses outside of the ports in South Carolina and stop every ship that's coming in and coming out of South Carolina and force them to pay the tariff. He also asked Congress for permission to use federal troops and state militias to put down South Carolina in defensive measures. What is Jackson prepared to do? Yeah, he's prepared to wipe South Carolina off the map. When is South Carolina going to nullify? February. February rolls around. South Carolina comes up to the podium. South Carolina is still going to nullify the tariffs of 28 and 32 in March. And they walk away. They postpone it for another month. All right. Congress is working on several different things. Do we want to go to a civil war at this point? No. Okay. Congress is going to pass a force bill trying to enforce what? The Tariff of 32. Finally, March rolls around. Okay. March rolls around, and our knight in shining armor is going to come with a compromise. Who's our master of compromise? Henry Clay. So let's take a look at this. Okay. If we're starting off here in 33. Okay, and I'm just going to go out and put it at 42. Okay. Jackson's tariff, that tariff of 32, remember, was a gradual decline in the tariff rates, right? Over X amount. And we'll just have to pretend that this is all even and gradual and not super janky. All right. Now, that's his tariff. Clay's tariff, Clay comes with this compromise tariff of 1833. The compromise tariff of 33 is a gradual reduction over the next 9 years. After 1842, the rate's going to drop a lot. Clay's tariff. Little drops. I ran out of room, and then it levels off way down there. Now, if we take a look at this, at the start and the end point, is there much difference in these tariffs? No. It all relatively ends at the same point. But Congress is going to pass this compromise tariff of 1833. It's going to pass the House on February 26th, the Senate March 1st. South Carolina accepts the compromise tariff of 33. Why?
Jackson didn't make it.
Because it's not Jackson's tariff. It's not Jackson's tariff. Okay? South Carolina, though, they are hell-bent on nullifying something. Since the compromise tariff of 33 replaced the compromise tariff of 32, can they still nullify the tariff of 32? No. So they're going to nullify the force bill. That's stupid. Because think about it. If the tariff of 32 just got replaced by the comp tariff of 33, what happened to the force bill? It goes away. We're going to nullify something. We're angry. Yeah, pretty much. So, the nullification controversy, though, ends, but South Carolina is still going to be ridiculous until, what, today. Okay. So, let's take a look at the biggest issue after this nullification controversy is settled, is the bank. Because what did Jackson do in his first term? Killed the bank. Okay? And a lot of people are asking questions. Okay, now that the bank is not going to get rechartered, what happens to the deposits? Because what are we going to do? Where are we going to put this money? Is the money that we're putting into the bank, is it safe? Okay? Jackson doesn't feel that the bank is a safe place to put the money, and so Jackson is going to encourage the government to remove the deposits. Okay, he wants all the federal money out of the bank, what I call removal of deposits. All right, he wants the deposits out of the bank. Starting in October of 33, under this directive, the government will stop depositing revenue into the second bank. Okay, we're going to stop depositing revenue into the second bank. And the government would just use up all the money that was still in the bank. All right, once they ran out of money, then they would move on to other banks. Now, since we're not depositing money into the second bank, he's going to start depositing money into state banks. what he calls pet banks. We take a look, what banks is he not going to deposit money into?
Kentucky, South Carolina, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware.
Why? Why those?
Because they did vote for him.
Because they didn't vote for him. Okay? That's what we're going to see. So, what do we say? October? October is when we stop depositing. By December, all the money's out of the bank. All the federal money is out of the bank. All right? The impact was immediate. Okay, the impact was immediate. The second bank became strict on collecting loans from state banks. State banks started becoming strict on collecting from the people. And what we're going to see is a small banking panic is going to ensue. What year is this? Well, we ran out of that money in December of 33, so we're going into 34. How often do we have panics? When's the last time we had one? 18, 19, right? But we give ourselves a plus or minus 5. Are we in the danger zone? And we're starting a banking panic. Is this a good idea? Probably not. We take a look here at this political cartoon. We got Van Buren, we got Downey, we got Jackson, and yep, that. I don't know who that's supposed to be. And then this says, I am the ghost of commerce. What's happening to the economy?
Stop.
Yeah, okay. The Senate, they're all fired up, all right? In March of 1834, the Senate's had enough of Jackson, and they're going to vote to place a presidential censure on Jackson. Presidential censure. Huh? I'm glad you asked. I'll let you know. A presidential censure is basically an ultimate vote of no confidence. Okay? No, we don't really knee the president in the groin, and so his lips shut. Although that could be pretty fun. A presidential censure is this vote of no confidence. It's not as far as say, impeaching the president, because has Jackson done anything that he could be impeached for? No. But what a presidential censure does is basically silence the president. Okay, silences the president. It's Congress's way of letting the president know we are not going to follow your lead on legislation anymore. For what the Senate here is concerned, Jackson can just sit on his hands and keep his mouth shut for the rest of his presidency. They're not going to follow his lead. They're not going to listen to his opinion in crafting legislation. All right. Now, we got a really weak bank at this point, and at this time, whenever there was a weak economy, people started speculating on land. Remember, we talked about land speculation, right? You know, flipping land. Today, whenever we have these economic downturns, we don't typically see land speculation because it's there's not an abundance of land for sale. But what we typically see today is people try to buy what?
Businesses.
Think about them. They pop up everywhere. You saw them all over the place a couple years ago. Every corner. Dude flipping a sign saying, we buy gold. All right? Specie. Specie is precious metals, gold and silver. All right? The reason why people speculate on gold today is because it keeps its value. Okay? It keeps its value. But back then, it was land speculation. Now, because of a weak bank, we're going to see a lot of land speculation start. Jackson doesn't like this. Okay, Jackson doesn't like the land speculation, and Jackson wants to stop speculation. Can he push Congress to do something? No. So in July of 1863, he is going to invoke what's known as the Specie Circular while Congress is not in session. Okay? He waits till Congress goes on vacation and he pushes this through himself, the specie circular. What is specie? I just mentioned it. Gold or silver. Okay? And this specie circular said that the government officials will only accept gold or silver for land. Okay? They're only going to accept gold or silver for land. He invokes this while Congress isn't in session. Like I said, when Congress gets back in, are they going to be happy with Jackson? No. But they wait until February of 37 to repeal the specie circular. The repeal of the specie circular hits Jackson's desk with less than 10 days. So what's Jackson going to do? He's going to pocket veto that bad boy. Okay? He will pocket veto the repeal. And at that point, it's February 37, March of 37. We got the new president coming in. And Jackson's done. Okay? Jackson, though, whether you like him or not, you have to recognize that he was a strong president. Okay? He's a very, very strong president. We see the power of the president expand greatly. And really, even more, Jackson started a political movement. Okay? Jackson starts a political movement that we're going to have to deal with for, I don't know, the next, probably 20 years or so, of Jacksonian principles. What I mean, if we take a look here, here's Jackson, number 7 president. He's a 2-termer. Van Buren, his little protege, is going to come in and try to continue all of Jacksonian's policy, or all of Jackson's policies. Okay? Now, they crush him. He's going to get hit with a panic right there at the very beginning of his term. Is it his fault? No, but we tend to blame who for economic downturns? President. Okay? Now, because of that, the Whigs are going to gain some momentum and elect in Harrison. Okay? Now, Harrison here, in my opinion, is the worst president we've ever had. Because the dude only lasted like 36 days in office. He spoke for way too long, got a cold, got pneumonia, and died. Now, he's the Whig candidate. I don't know how this happened, but the Whigs nominated a former Jacksonian Democrat as their vice president. Which means when Van Buren's gone, the Whigs are theoretically in power for 36 days, and then who takes over? A Jacksonian in Whig clothing. Tyler does whatever he wants. Really, whatever who wants? Jackson. Okay? And so to the point where the Whigs are actually going to write him out of the party. They're going to disown him. All right? And then the goat comes in and cleans everything up, and he's the last of the Jacksonians. So we really have Jackson in power from 28 to 48. The goat, the greatest of all time, James K. Polk. And his super fresh mullet, man. He's got a fresh mullet. All right? He's the goat. So, like I said, lots of parallels. Lots of parallels going on. For example, think about the rise of Jackson versus the rise of Trump. All right? Did people back then think Jackson was qualified to be president? Did he come from a background that any of the other presidents had? No. Did Trump? No, not at all. He's a businessman, sure. But we've had lots of businessmen who also were politicians before. Was Trump? No. All right. We take a look at Jackson comes in and he wants to effectively, I'll use terms that we use today, repeal and replace what piece of legislation that was created under the guise of necessary and proper? The bank. Trump is now in trying to repeal and replace what that was created under the guise of necessary and proper? Affordable Care Act. Jackson wanted to get all of who out of the country? Indians. Trump wants to get, God, there's so many. There's the media. Does the media like Trump? Man, you guys should do some searches and see what they said about Jackson. Holy cow, man. I mean, even like the trash talk in the elections. All the things that, that Trump and Hillary said to each other. Think about what JQ and Jackson said. They're calling each other's wives whores. All right? There's so many parallels going on. You guys have got to understand that history repeats itself, and largely we are in one giant cycle, and here we are. Yes?
So Jackson was supposed to like Calhoun, right?
Yeah.
Then, Donald Trump is supposed to like Mike Pence, but isn't there something between them?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff, man. I really don't. I'm of the thought that my life doesn't change by the man who's elected, by the president. All right? Remember, the president doesn't matter. Who can actually create legislation and laws? Congress. The president can only create what? Executive orders. And executive orders only last how long?
Or as long as they're not.
Yeah, as long as they're in office. There are bigger fish to fry than the president of the United States. And, it's all Congress. You got to keep people accountable. You can't just vote for who's got the coolest yard signs or the correct letter beside their name. Otherwise, you're just a tool for someone else's ambition. And for all my fans on the World Wide Web, make sure that you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. McSchmooden, you know why. When we get back in here on, tomorrow, we'll knock out the goal for tomorrow. We're going to knock out Martin Van Buren and HaHa Harrison and John Tyler. That's 8 years. 3 dudes, 8 years. It shouldn't take long at all. That'll leave us Monday with the goat and Tuesday with all the hippie stuff so we can walk around doing this stuff feeling good. That's right. Like, comment, subscribe, and you get some more of this.